When we think of the Cold War, we imagine spies, nukes, and the Berlin Wall. We imagine a victory, the West triumphant, capitalism proven superior, freedom over tyranny. But what if that story is incomplete? What if the Cold War didn't just end? It mutated into something invisible, financial, and unstoppable. What if the real damage wasn't the arms race, but the economic logic it left behind? Because today, as the world grapples with inflation, debt crises, broken supply chains, and fragile globalization, a haunting question returns. Did the Cold War break the world economy? And worse, did it ever actually end? Textbooks say the Cold War ended in 1991. The Soviet Union fell. Capitalism won. The world moved on, but behind that triumphant headline lies a quieter truth. Both sides lost, just in different ways. You see, the Cold War wasn't just a political rivalry. It was an economic war, powered by three engines. Number 1, hyper-militarized spending, regardless of cost. Number 2, debt as a weapon and a shield. Number 3, global markets reshaped for strategy, not sustainability. This wasn't an economic system built to win. It was built to survive a war that never came, and yet was always expected, and that mindset never stopped. To understand how the Cold War broke the world economy, we start in 1944, even before it began. World leaders met in Bretton Woods to design a new financial system after World War II. Their goals sounded noble: prevent another Great Depression, stabilize currencies, rebuild Europe. But there was a hidden assumption. The United States was now the core of global finance, and the world would organize around the dollar. Then came the Marshall Plan in 1948, money to rebuild Europe, yes, but also to contain the Soviet Union. This is where it begins, economics as a weapon. The Soviet Union answered with central planning, factories, steel, oil, forced industrialization, a system not designed for prosperity, but for speed and scale. It had to catch up, fast, or die trying. Both sides believed the same dangerous idea: if we slow down, we lose. This fear drove spending beyond logic. U.S. military budget, 1950, $13 billion. U.S. military budget, 1953, $50 billion, a nearly 400% increase in 3 years. And instead of decreasing after crises, military budgets became the baseline, a permanent cost. Meanwhile, Soviet leaders poured up to 30% of GDP into military production, more than any modern economy could survive. This isn't build-up, it's self-inflicted harm. A war fought not on the battlefield, but through the destruction of your own economic future to intimidate your enemy. The 1950s and 60s felt like a miracle. America boomed. Cars, homes, appliances, the consumer age arrived. But behind the prosperity lay a hidden scaffolding. Military contracts kept factories alive, research labs depended on defense spending. Universities bloomed under Cold War funding. Oil alliances bought stability at any price. This wasn't a free market. It was a subsidized one. Meanwhile, the Soviets reported massive growth figures. 5-year plans promised progress. Space race victories made communism look unstoppable, but their numbers hid inefficiencies. No price signals, no incentives, no consumer choice production targets without purpose. The Soviet Union built the world's largest military, but couldn't build enough basic goods, to systems, to illusions, both unsustainable. And then the bill arrived. The 1970s changed everything. 1971. The US ended the gold standard. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. Currencies started floating. Stability vanished. Why did America do it? Because Cold War spending had created such massive imbalances. The gold reserves couldn't keep up. 1973, the oil shock, the West's reliance on Middle Eastern oil, a Cold War strategic choice backfired. Oil prices quadrupled. Inflation spiraled. Recession hit. 1979, the second oil shock, another blow, another wave of inflation, another lesson ignored. To defend their economies, countries deregulated markets, privatized industries, and unleashed global finance. This was not just economics, this was emergency medicine, crisis capitalism. But these emergency measures became the new normal. Today's world of big finance, speculative markets, fragile supply chains, global inequality was born as a survival tactic. By the 1980s, the Soviet system was cracking. Aging infrastructure, oil dependence, black markets, a currency no one trusted. Mikhail Gorbachev tried to fix it. Perestroika, glasnost reforms meant to modernize, but reforms came too late, and the world waited for a peaceful end. It didn't happen. Between 1989 and 1991, the Soviet Union fell, not from military defeat, but from economic exhaustion. For many, this looked like victory. But here's the twist. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the Cold War didn't end. The world simply lost its excuse for the system it had built. And without that excuse, economic contradictions exploded. After 1991, the world embraced what it believed was the final answer. Globalization. Markets would spread everywhere. Trade would fix everything. War would be unprofitable. A beautiful idea, but built on a lie that the systems created during the Cold War could support a peaceful world. Instead, what happened? Industry offshored for profit, energy dependency locked in new vulnerabilities, global supply chains became fragile, nations traded sovereignty for efficiency. Russia's economy collapsed in the 90s. Privatization turned into oligarchy. Eastern Europe struggled under IMF shock therapy. The West became addicted to cheap imports and cheap credit. And the US, it inherited global leadership, but also global responsibility and global risk. Look around. We live in a world of trade wars, proxy conflicts, sanctions as weapons, tech races, missile tests. Currency battles sound familiar. Because the Cold War logic never left, it simply shifted targets. Instead of communism versus capitalism, it's now great power competition. Us versus China, NATO versus Russia, West versus Global South, influence and the economy. 2023 global debt, over $300 trillion, more than 3 times global GDP. Military spending, highest since the Cold War. Supply chain fragility. One ship stuck in a canal halted $9 billion in daily trade. These aren't random problems, they are Cold War echoes. So what do we learn from this story? Takeaway number 1. The Cold War wasn't won, it was survived. Both systems extracted their price, and that bill continues to grow. Takeaway number 2. Economies built for war cannot sustain peace. The habits of fear, spending, control, secrecy do not translate into stability. Takeaway number 3. Globalization without resilience is just dependency with better packaging. Efficiency isn't strength, redundancy. Maybe the Cold War never ended. Maybe it just changed shape. And maybe the world's greatest risk is pretending that everything is normal. Because if a system built for war is allowed to run the world's economy, then peace is an accident, not an achievement. So we face a choice. Do we keep trying to win a war that's already over? Or do we finally build an economy meant to last, not fight? If this story made you rethink history, hit the like button so the algorithm knows this is a conversation worth having. Subscribe for more investigations into the hidden forces shaping our world. And comment below. Did the Cold War ever actually end? I read every answer. Fade to black.